Well, hello everyone. We have right here talking about right here is an illustrated picture right here of a bird's nest right here. And I'm sure most of us have seen a bird's nest before, and you always want to know too, as to where, yeah, but what about a bird's nest? If there's any source of English language referred to where that, yeah, if you find a bird nest anywhere in 102, that okay, yeah, that if you find a bird's nest anywhere, but everybody might even tell you that you may see bird's nest in the trees a lot of times. How often are you really going to see any bird's nest located like if you see a bird's nest located like on any high structures, or maybe if it's maybe in the gutters, or maybe in tree houses, or whichever it is. But still, a lot of times that whenever you do see them, and you're warned toward that, hey, that if you find a bird's nest anywhere, for sure, right? It's like, people may want to know too that whenever you do see a bird's nest anywhere, that you're thinking is toward it. Well, how cute is that? How cute, but still, that whenever you do look at a bird's nest right here, that I would like to know that how come there was really no story written about the birds, the bird's nest right here, in case if anybody's wondering that why wasn't there any poems or riddles written about the birds, about the bird in the nest right here, and I don't really recall any hearing about any stories about the bird in its nest right there, and other than the robin, robin's nest or whichever, but still, I haven't heard very many, too many of them. But you see this right here, I'm talking about with the bird nest right here. That whenever I would see a bird nest right here, this is back whenever I was young, though, that I'll be curious to know as to how they build the nest, because, as you know, that the way that a bird's nest is built right here, that you had these sticks and twigs right here, but the way that they're glued, they're not really glued together, but they're just kind of like, attached together right here, and I don't know if it's maybe tree sap or something like that for how that they build the nest, but you see this right here to where that they build it like a source of a type of bowl right here, to where that they build like the nest way they put the twigs together from where they lay the eggs right here. But nowadays it seems like that, yeah, that the bird nest laws to where that applies to where that allow the mother bird to build her nest and to use this land for to where that she can house her youngs. And you want to know too that if maybe if the same rule applies to maybe the states like Canada or elsewhere, that to where that you allow the birds to be able to to nest their young ones, that nest their babies. And a lot of times it sure seems that way, that if you ever want to know too, toward it, the type of law that I'm talking about is toward it, yeah, that allow the mother bird, allow allow the birds to nest, for 3 weeks, during the time of the bird season, and so you begin to learn about that toward it. That if we look at the month of Easter, the holiday Easter right here in 102, that okay, yeah, you heard about that, but still, where do you think that you would find a bird's nest anywhere? People may want to know too that, yeah, you see it a lot of times in trees, but how often do you really see these bird nests being built? Maybe in tree houses, maybe in dumpsters, or wherever it is. And you want to know too that if a bird is going to build their nest anywhere, you would maybe think that the first place that they would maybe find is maybe somewhere where it was at least 7 feet in the air. Maybe such as a tree, or maybe like a little shaded warm area, or somewhere such as maybe a window or somewhere like that. But I painted this picture right here is just to represent for the nest right here. But like everybody might say that yeah, if you were to actually find a bird's nest, you may think that, okay, this is no tree right here. It's a quiet, yeah, a warm, quiet place is usually where they would find the bird's nest a lot of times. And U102, that where do you think that the bird is going to be finding its nest at? And U102, okay, yeah, the bird nest. the bird is going to be looking for areas to build a nest. And most of the time, where do you think that those areas are going to be? Well, first and foremost, that they would be building their nest in places where it's high off the ground. And of course, whenever where it's quiet, where it's warm and quiet, to maybe other areas where there's dark or maybe shadow type areas. But like you said, that if you find any bird nest around, but like you said, that if you find a bird nest around and they have that, these laws to where that they said that will allow the bird to nest her young ones for the 3 or 4 weeks during the time of the spring season right here. So you always want to know too that if you read the instruction manual to the backyard guidelines for the state or for the federal government's state guidelines about if you find anything wild going on in your backyard, that you should allow the birds, you should allow the mother bird to go ahead and build her nest, use your yard for their property while they're protecting their young ones. And so you begin to wonder toward it, yeah, well, how come that I really had not really heard a story of such thing right here? Whenever you look at a bird's nest right here, you just look about how it was put together, right? But, I thought that looked kind of cute just by looking at the eggs right here. And like everybody might say, that if you see that there's eggs inside the nest right there, and you're warned toward it, hey, that there's eggs inside the nest, and, I'm like, yeah, so everybody might say that if there's eggs inside the nest, then you should leave the nest alone. You should allow the mother bird to where she can nest her young ones. And so usually around the springtime, beginning by March 30th through like May the 7th or something like that, during spring holiday, that you would see, birds, nesting, that they would build a nest and they would have their nest. But I'm just like wondering that if you were to actually read a story about that, and I mean, I don't really recall very many stories about the birds building their nest and knowing that, okay, yeah, if you find a bird nest somewhere, but let's just say you find one at your window. You find a bird nest at your window, or you find one morning, but it's near the shed or near the canopy bed or something like that. Like everybody might say that you hear these stories about the bird nest laws, but you always wonder that okay, yeah, they decide to build a nest inside of a birdhouse or somewhere like that. And so you begin to wonder that if you were to find a bird nest somewhere and you weren't to where, okay, yeah, why do you think that the bird wanted to build its nest right here? This is not no tree, or this is not no bushes or anything like that. And everybody might say that, well, what if you do find any bird nest inside the bushes? The bushes. The bushes is where that the mother bird decided to put her nest. And so you want to know too that places like bushes or anywhere like that, but like here, that people might say that, yeah, they might go ahead and decide if there's a few bushes around the corner of a certain property, walking around the property, and you see that the bird decided to build a nest right there. And but still, you begin to wonder that if you want to write like any source of poetry about that, any source of sentence about that, about what does it usually mean if you do find a bird's nest anywhere that you're going to be walking, anywhere that you're going to be seeing a bird's nest. And so people may say, yeah, I think that's kind of cute how it was put together, but still, normally you see them in trees, but if you see them in the bushes, or if you do see them maybe on, near the sidewalk or wherever, and you weren't to where, well, go ahead and leave the birds alone. But still, that back whenever I was a kid, by the way, it sure seemed that way, that you thought that was kind of cute just to watch if the birds are going to hatch, or just knowing about the birds are in their nest. But like you said, for about maybe 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks, that's usually around the time that they're building their nest, and wherever that they decide to build it. And you like want to know too that, yeah, they got the birdhouses and everything, but still, just so that way you can understand it though, that anywhere they decide to build it, that they tell you that you allow the bird to go ahead and build its nest right there, and so that way they can go ahead and harness its nest. But you want to know too that why haven't you, you really have not really heard of such story about that to where if a bird decides to build its nest, chances are it's not going to be in the trees. From wherever it's going to be built, that they ask you to go ahead and leave the bird alone, but still, that you begin to wonder that if you find a bird nest maybe near a window or maybe at the bushes or somewhere like that, and they say that, well, allow the bird to go ahead and have their nest so that way they can so they can protect their young ones, and so you begin to wonder that, yeah, that for how the bird nest was put together right here, and people want to know too that is it often that maybe you might see 5 eggs inside the nest, or maybe just one. Sometimes it's just one or two of them, or something like that. But still, that you see right here that you got the eggs right here, and you see this right here. Yeah, you got the eggs right here, and then but still, that you begin to wonder that. If you see a nest with eggs in there and you want to know too that are they, yeah, if you look closely at them and want to know about if they're maybe 2 weeks in or maybe 3 weeks in or something like that, how soon are they and whenever they begin to hatch. But usually it's about 4 weeks, something like that. But still, after they hatch and all, but still that you know, uh, whenever you do think about it, by the way, and you want to know too that usually around the springtime is usually whenever you see that, but still that birds build their nest not just in trees, but sometimes it's near the bushes and sometimes it's on the windows, and so that's why it seems like that. If you do read any news articles, any papers about where birds and bumblebees would like to build their nest, and a lot of times it's like you can't really pick where they want to build their nest, but just knowing that you heard the story about where they decide to build their nest, and knowing wherever they pick, just leave the birds alone, leave the nest alone. But still, I begin to wonder that if you do see a bird's nest anywhere, and you want to know too that, okay, yeah, why exactly is it that maybe that bird decided to build the nest right there, but still, you read the stories about that, and they said that, yeah, well, for most, they go into areas where they feel like that they would like to build a nest, a place where it's warm, a place where not very many people are using that area or wherever, and you want to know too. Okay, yeah. What about the bushes and maybe the windows? A lot of birds might build their nest near on the windows, windows or maybe near the bushes or wherever. But like you said, that if we see a new season of birds, and you want to know too that this is a type of season where you're going to be seeing a lot of birds, especially in the morning. There are going to be birds flying around, and they might decide to go ahead and build their nest elsewhere, and you begin to wonder that, okay, yeah, that you'll see that, but you always wondered if you would actually tell a story about that. 102, that why is it that the bird decided to build its nest right here? But still, you're warned to where, yeah, you look at the eggs right there, and you're warned to where, okay, that's an interesting story that you see the birds one morning, but then you're warned to where it yeah. What's one thing about it that makes it so special about that is that, yeah, you wake up one morning and find out that that you hear chirp, chirp, chirp or something like that, but still, people might say that, yeah, you see a bird's nest being built, but like you said, that whenever you look at them, at your window, and you want to know too that, hey, you want to say hi to the birds, that morning, or you want to say, like, yeah, say hi to the birds, once they hatch, but still. But anyway, talk about the bird's nest story right here.